Hello, my friends. I certainly hope you're doing well today. Uh, just got a little pretty Fae-related painting we're going to do here. I know it's not shown up on camera, but I do have it sketched out in watercolor pencil. And let's go ahead. Normally we would start with the background, but I think today I'm going to start with the face. I do have a picture I'm basing the face off of, and where the shadows and lights are will kind of help me determine where the sunlight should be striking the background. So, I think first, I'm going to mix up a very little bit of light gray. Get some of that liquid pouring medium in there to help thin my paints and keep it loose. And we're going to start with the eyes since they're recessed behind the skin. I'm just putting a little gray in there because I don't want them to be pure white. They look a little too bright. The eyes do when they're pure white. There's always a little bit of shade on them. So go ahead and put that. So I always put that little bit of shade in. Of course, they're a little darker in the corners than they are right around the iris. So a little bit of white. Just to brighten up outside of the corners. And since I forgot where I was going there. I don't know what I was going to do. Gotta get that little membrane in the eye. So we'll take a touch of red into some of that white. A touch of a burnt sienna into some of that white. And we'll brighten it up. Get the color out of that little brush. Get a little more white in there. And we'll get that little membrane in the corner of her eyes. Those little membranes in the corner tend to stay pretty wet. So we'll put maybe white, a little more white on them. Right, now we can go ahead and paint in the eyes. Start some blue. Again, we'll mix. I want to mix a little of the sienna in it. That might have been a little too much, so let's get a little more blue. Don't necessarily want a really bright blue. I want to keep it fairly natural looking, even though we're doing a Fae painting. Slightly dull blue in there. Now we're going to brighten it and also desaturate it with a little white. The iris is always a little darker on the outside. So leave the shadow in there. I'll get a little black so we can put in the pupils. That one isn't quite round enough, so we'll throw more in there. And I'll take another little touch of white. A few highlights in on there. Pupils. Mix a little more of that darker original blue color. I want to reshape this iris in particular. More shade on it. I actually feel like I need to move those pupils a little closer, or a little further to the left. Looks like she's just kind of looking off in the distance right now, as opposed to my source photograph. But looking at it, I kind of like how that looks, so I think I'm going to leave it. Now I can take some white, some sienna, thin it up some. That might have been a little too thin. We'll find out when we start putting our paint on. Oh no, not too thin. Okay. I'm not going to do too much detail on the ear right now because we'll be putting some hair and some background around it, so I figure that can wait. I'm kind of starting around the edges. Red skin is a little darker. I'm not too worried if some of that, a little bit of that blue tone seeps in. Also not worried about coloring a little outside the lines there because hair will go over most of that. We have the shade of the chin. That'll help us with the overall shape of the face. Shape of the chin, and there'll be a shadow line on the neck. So I'm not sweating it too badly. So this is just kind of a base coat. I'm kind of pulling it flat to even the tone out as much as I can. Doesn't need to be perfect in this stage. So we'll have shadows and highlights over parts as well. Speaking of, put a little highlight kind of on the nose and around where her eyebrows will be. Put a little of that cerulean red in there to warm it some. Bright spot of white right there. Take a little more of that highlight. Thicken up that darker one somewhere. I feel like I had a little too much of the pouring medium in there. the eyes now. Now it's a little too thick, so we'll get a little more of that in there. Like that. A little thicker on there, but let some of that blue in the sketch show through. Tell me where I need to put the nostril. I just want to get that a little more even. Especially down there on the chin, I feel like needs another coat and a little reshaping. I think I'm gonna brighten up this space a little more white. And get that reddish white on the brush. Thin down some. I'm gonna just brush my brush off on the towel I keep in my lap if you're wondering what that scrapey sound is. We're gonna kind of soften these edges out. Let's put a little touch more of the red in there. That was a little too much. Let's get a little more white. Okay. Rosied it up a little too much. There we go. A little bit on the ear there, right in that. A little bit of that here on the chin as well. I'll take a little white. Reshape that jaw a little bit. It's a little too sharp. Okay. Get a little more of that rosy red down in here as well. I think we need a little bit in here. A little bit above the upper lip. Okay. I get a small blush. Small blush. That's what I do when somebody compliments me, a small blush. Get a small brush. And the eyelashes in there on the eye. Get a little over here. And then take a little brown. Taking great pains to pull this brush as flat as I can. And a few little lashes on the underside of the eyes there. A little shade in the corner. Same over here. And that brown and white mix I did, gonna get a little more brown in there. And we can put in her eyelashes. A little thinner over here. Not thinner, but yeah, I guess a little thinner over there would be the right word to use. Okay. Anyhow, I'll just leave them like that for now in case I feel the need to go back and raise them up or lower them. Then all that brown again. The folds above the eyes. And we can use that as well for that. Ooh, that can scrape off. I'm going to need to put more paint over that, so we'll scrape off what we can. Yeah, I can already tell I'm going to need to move those eyelashes up. Let's get a touch more brown into that color. And shade on that side, yeah. Let's go ahead and move those eyebrows up. So let's mix up a little more of that pinkish color. Pink that up just a teeny bit. Down here, there we go. I'll just connect those little areas. And a few more little areas here I want to put. A little more white paint on. I'm just putting it on very gently, very thin layer. Since that acrylic is still damp, it's taking it in. All right. A little more of that pinkish color. Put in. Another layer of paint over the original eyebrows. A little brown. That was too much white. A little more brown in there again. Thin it some. There we go. We can put those back in now. Just a touch higher of where I had them originally. A little more of that pink. Let's get a little more white on there. A little brown for a little shade color again. I want to get coming down. Need to reshape her nose there some. Do that just by getting a little shade. Get that texture out of there. Take a little red. Get a little sienna into this mix too. And a little of the flow medium. As the shade right around there on the nose. A little bit over on this side. A little bit. Let's push it up into that other shadow color a little bit. shade up above those eyelid creases. Just right here. A little bit over here. And take a little white again. Kind of cover up over here where I came over the line. Just so I have an idea of the shape of her face. It'll help keep the tone a little more even too when I go in to do the, what's the word I'm looking for? When I put the hair over it. There it is. Put some white in there. Let's go ahead and fill that up a little bit too. Okay. And a few little freckles I want to add here and there. I feel like this eyebrow isn't quite right still. Push it a little further north. And by north, I mean further up on the face. I need to make that nostril a little bigger. Okay. Alright, that looks better. Alright, let's go ahead and get her lips in there now. So that cad red, I think I said cerulean red earlier, but it's cad red. And we'll add a little touch of the burnt sienna. Don't need a lot, just a little. We'll start with a smaller brush for the corners of the lips. Okay. I'm going to reshape the bottom of this lip some. Push the corner up a touch. Take this brush, pull it flat again through there. And I don't want it black. So I'm using the brown. And line in there. Alright, that helped it to look a little bit more like she's smiling, not so angry. And a soft smile on her. Not a big joyous smile, but just a little hint of maybe she knows something we don't. Bottom lip a little fuller. Okay, now you can add Oh, and a little cyan and a little brown in a part of that. Before I do any of that, clean that brush, that corner of the lip. Actually, both corners of the lip. Her smile. It's a little too wide. Cut it off there some. Skin color. And do the same over here. And thicker and brighter for over here. I keep seeing other little areas that need a touch up too. I'll get rid of that nostril line and push it out a little further. Made her nose a little too narrow. Okay, let's get that pulled flat. Stop a little there. A little bit more. Yeah, I like how that little bit of a smirk line looks. And right over here, bring it up a little bit too. Soften it again, almost into a small smile. Shade on the bottom of the lip. Little shade on the bottom of the top lip. I want to get some highlights on the bottom lip. Bottom lip, just based on the shape, always catches a little more light than the top lip. And what else we're gonna do? That eyebrow comes out a little too far. Reshape that. Cover the underneath up a little more too. Okay, now we can go ahead and let's go ahead. First, I'm going to touch up corner of that eye there. Shadow one. Oh, that's not quite dark enough. Let's get it a little bit darker. Get it flat. Push that nostril out a little further. Yeah, that line should be about right there. Drop the nostril a little bit. And I'll get some of that lighter brown for a little shadow. That ain't dark enough. Get a little more of the brown in there. There we go. That shall come all the way down. All the way down to the bottom of that nostril. Now we're going to get a little white. That was a little too much, but we can just clean off our brush. Soften it out. And get a little more just on the tip. Just kind of right here. A little bit more. And a little bit across. A little bit across the top of the lip there. All right. Now I feel like the shade on that nostril might be coming out a little too low, maybe even a little too far, so we'll just reshape it just a hair. Yeah, I like that. Go ahead. A little bit of shade in the ear here. Oh, that was too much. Got some freckles and things that I want to add in for me. I don't want to color my model. My friend, Sasha. Told her the other day I wanted to paint, and she was joking around like, paint me like one of your French girls. I thought, for Sasha, a little more wholesome would be more in order. She's just the kind of person that makes you want to be a better person. My little pixie. So we're going with that Fae theme. But I also do want it to be recognizable as her. It's starting to look a little more and more like her as I move along. So if you're wondering why I was taking, you still want to soften that edge up again. There. Put a little white over it too. You don't need to do this. Like again, it'll be covered up by the hair, but this just helps my mind's eye. I think I do want to make those black lashes a little thicker though. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Yeah, a little more of this brighter highlight. Right up in there, yeah, we'll get some on the top of the head here as well. want a little more highlight around the mouth there. More down side of the face here. Yep, definitely starting to look more and more like her. Soften the smooth angles up. Okay, let's just want to make a shade color for the neckline. Don't think I'll paint that in yet. Yeah, the whole of the neck. It'll be coming up. That does need to be a little darker and a little cooler, so we're gonna mix. I'm gonna mix a little of the brown in. Brown should cut down on that red. Still not quite dark enough. Let's see what happens if we mix a little blue in. There we go. That's nice. It's a nice, cool color. And the bottom. Alright. I think I want to add her facial piercings in. I wasn't sure if I was at first, if I was going to do that at first, but they're a part of her, so they should be a part of the painting, in my opinion. Start with the white, and then add in the shade as we go. Put it over there. Oh yeah, she did that. Mini plug earring there. Okay. Now we can get the black for the... Let's mix a little white into that black. Get a gray. Alright. Now let's get a brush. I think you're a little too crispy, brother. Yeah, let's get a soft brush. We're going to start painting in the background here. I'm going to start putting some black in between the light part of the wings. I'm gonna leave those there for the most part because paint over it with white later. Right now. By the white, I mean the lines inside the wings. Like I say, we're kind of it's a Fae piece, so. Faes need wings. At least in my artwork, they do. And there will be like some bright splashes of color over parts of this. I also don't want the background looking super clear through the rings. So we're going to start with this. And get some browns and greens, and then this little area is where our background will be in focus. And I'm already looking at some parts of the face that I want to touch up again. We'll get to it though. I'll figure out at least paint all this black in before I go back to the face. I kind of want to. A little much of the canvas tooth showing through there. I want to cover up. Okay. That's part of the reason I also like to use some of that flowing medium mixed into my paint. It eliminates a lot of those breaks. Not all of them, but a lot more than I would if the paint was fully thick. And the other reason I like to use it is because it stays wet on the canvas and it makes it a lot easier to mix a little color when needed to on the canvas. And if you don't need to mix color, it doesn't take much more than an hour or so to dry. Alright, let's go ahead and I'm going to touch up on the face. So yeah, I'm going to soften. Well, that pink color again. I kind of want to widen the bridge of her nose there, just ever so slightly. Get a little highlight on that nostril. Soften out the edge of that shadow there. It's a very soft face. So I want to keep that softness. And also some of these freckles look a little dark, so put a little of that skin color over it just to diffuse them some. They're still there, but they're not as noticeable. Okay. I'll put a little more black in here. Now we can clean that brush out. Get a little brown. Well, that sienna will work too. We can actually work some sienna and brown. We're just gonna put some color in here. Heck, we can even color over where the white lines are gonna be in here. Just for that background, and then we'll get a little bit of our brown that's darker, but not quite as dark as the black. But darker than the sienna. A little bit of that in there. And a little of the green. A little of that green. We'll mix a little of the sienna into that green. A little flowing medium too. Remember, we don't want super detail in this section. So the wings are see-through. They do have a texture to them. Kind of think of it as a frosted shower door, where you can see some color, a little bit of shape, but not necessarily detail. That is what I'm going for here. And we'll take a little olive green as well. I'm not going super crazy with detail or color. Just getting some color highlights in there. And then around her head is where we're going to have the in focus, if you will, background. And for that, I'm going to start with some blue. Get a little bit of that into that pink and a little white. So you can add a little touch of brown to dilute it a little bit. I want the colors on her to pop a little more. And then the colors in the background. This is just going to be a little bit of sky. I'm leaving the edges rough because the sky's in the background, clearly. And there'll be some landscape kind of popping over it. Clean that brush. Get some white. I'm just kind of working. Well, hands of clouds. Give a little dynamism to the sky. We can also take some of that blue and white. Add a little bit more warmth to it. I had a little too much of the brown in the other one. A little more white. A little more light in the tops of these clouds. And put them in here as well. Okay, that should really do it for our sky. Take our half-inch, it's about a full-inch brush, isn't it? And add a little thinning medium to that black, just not as much. We'll even mix a little of the sienna and the brown into it. I think I need a little more. It's not coming. But, what's the word? There we go. Maybe. Yeah. Falls there. Actually, I need that to be a little higher than over here for a reason. That'll become apparent later. Okay. Cover that area a little bit, but we can always fix that later. Don't sweat it. Not too much for me. Thinning medium in that region, so we'll just kind of mix it into the rest of the paint. Yeah. It actually rises the terrain up some. Okay. Now for some of this, we're going to take our palette knife, right into the sienna, hold it about as flat as you can to the rocks, and cut in a little color here and there. Some off at the top here, but I'm using Your edge of the blade. Weird how I pretty much use a palette knife for everything, but what it's intended to do, mixing the paints, I always just mix it with my brushes. I don't know why. I just do. So if you were thinking of asking, just don't, because I don't have a good answer for you. Definitely need a little over here. Right here. And now we'll go back to the thin edge of the blade. I'm gonna get some on that other side now. As flat as you can to the canvas. And the other thing you want to do is use almost no pressure. I want to get a little more of a coat over some of this. Okay. Okay, now we're going to get a fan brush. And go into that darker green. Let's go ahead and mix just a little touch of the red cyan into it. On the tops of some of these highlighted areas. Just put in some little bushy things. Try to match your highlights up from the other side there as well. Now we'll go into our olive green. I think I might accidentally got a little of that yellow. Don't want that yet. What is going on with this brush? Got a little brush here that wants to come out. Okay, that could be a little bit of moss growing on those rocks. Some of the darker areas, maybe we'll just scratch a little color in like there is. Get a little too much, just use your finger to cut it down. Now we can go over to the other side and do the same. Get a little more of that brighter green. Let's thin that a little bit, see if that helps it stick. Yep. Get a little more color that way now. Maybe that little bush comes out over the top of the hill. Oh, wait. A little one over there. A few over here too. Just kind of creeping over the top. Maybe one more. Right here. Reshape some of these a little bit. They're looking a little rough. Okay. Some highlights on some of these. All right. Now we're going to get a different fan brush. You get some white mixed into some of that blue. A little bit of the pouring medium. All right. Start about right here. And we got a little waterfall behind her. Don't worry too much about going over the hairline. Down here. It's blocked by that little outcrop a little bit. Maybe just put in a little foam. In fact, let's get some white. Some sweet white. A little bit of foam on some of these rocks that it's beaten on. And a few little highlights. Maybe it doesn't flow all the time. Maybe just certain times of the year in the wet season or whatever. Alright, I think. Let's go ahead. Let's mix up a hair color for our yellow Fae here. A little bit of that yellow in there. And some white. And again, we're just kind of putting a base coat here. There will definitely be, what's the word? Contrast, highlights, shadows, all that. This is just to get an idea of, or not an idea, but put in the separation between her hair and the water. Oop. I covered up more of that ear than I wanted to, but we can fix that. Let's actually swoop down over there a little bit. And we're not going to fill it all in just yet. Because part of it sits down here over her dress. And so there's just to avoid, what's the word? Really, just to avoid extra work. Let's see, we're not gonna paint it all in yet. Well, let's go ahead and paint the base coat in though. That ain't gonna hurt nobody. That ain't gonna hurt no thing. us a little better idea of where our outlines are anyway. Paint globs in there I want to get rid of. Okay. I'm going to get a little brown because parts of the hair are darker than other. Let's thin that though. Make it a little easier to push around down there. There we go. And I think I'm at a point now where I take a break. And of course, through the magic video editing, won't be any time for you folks at all.